Hello, everyone. There's an African proverb that says, a person is a person because of other people. And I think about that a lot lately because growing up in Nigeria, I didn't realize how much community was shaping me. I grew up in a small town and everyone knew everyone, and I mean everyone knew everyone. My neighbors knew my parents knew my teachers, and the teachers probably knew my business before I got to school. That was very annoying at that point, but after moving countries and having to build a life from scratch, I realized what I grew up in was community, and community builds culture. Nowadays, a lot of people live next to each other, and they barely know each other's name or barely speak to each other. But what I grew up in, community was survival, it was identity, it was belonging. Greeting people back home was a serious business, especially in the small town I grew up in. You can't walk past an elder and you won't greet them. You walk on a journey and you greet so many people, it starts to feel like it's a community meeting. But that warmth really shaped me. Especially through sport, I was really passionate about sport growing up, and I was pretty much good at it. I was the captain for football, and I was really good on tracks. And at a point, I thought I was the fastest in the world after Usain Bolt, who I believe is the greatest of all time. I was also the sport director in primary school, secondary school, and in university, my final year, I decided to compete for the sport director role. And for the first time, I lost, and that was a really humbling experience. But when I look back, life teaches you that everything is not about winning. That sport was a form of shared friendship, dreaming together, competing together. And I also went to boarding school, and for people that went to boarding school in Nigeria, is a different energy on its own. And for people that also went to private university back home like me, it's more like a boarding house on its own because you have to live on campus. But I met a lot of my friends that are still my friends today in these dormitories, and we laughed together, we studied together, we spoke about our dreams together, but most importantly, we were able to help each other with homesickness. But what I realized in these rooms was that it was a community of becoming. I've always put a lot of pressure on myself growing up. One of my favorite books is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And there's a quote I realized that said, whatever your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And that belief took me from that small town to Lagos and to Wales today. And when you talk about Lagos, it's a different energy on its own. Lagos teaches you speed, it teaches you urgency, it teaches you adaptation, and most importantly, it teaches you how to hustle. I tell a lot of my friends there in Wales, and I say, if you go to Lagos and you can survive the traffic in Lagos, you can probably survive anywhere in the world. And that gets me thinking a lot because maybe that was preparing me for immigration years later. Having to move from that small town to live with my uncle in Lagos while I was studying in university. And people view immigration from a political point of view, from a statistical point of view, or from an economical point of view, but nobody really talks about immigration from an emotional point of view. Having to leave your family back home, coming to a new country and building a life from scratch. Nobody knows your story. Suddenly, people knew you back home, and then you're here, you become suddenly anonymous. I can remember working behind bars, working as a waiting staff, at the same time trying to complete my master's degree in international business management, trying to pay my rent, and simply just trying to survive as a normal human being. I think people underestimate how courageous that can be. But something changed, something happened, and community found me again, and everything changed. In late 2023, I founded Cloud Magazine, which is a youth culture platform dedicated to storytelling and underrepresented voices. And I realized something important, that culture doesn't suddenly appear. People build culture, we young people will build culture, and community builds that culture. And I realized that storytelling is one of the most important ways to make people feel seen. So that became central to my work because I'm a photographer. So as a Nigerian photographer who moved to Wales, I realized I became really intrigued by these two words, being Nigeria and living in Wales and studying the new landscape that I'm in. So I made that really central to my work and aligned these two cultures to live together naturally and honestly. because where I come from, I carry a lot of stories, so it was important for me to share with the world. I was commissioned by National Library of Wales earlier last year, and I decided to reimagine Welsh identity through African fabric and texture. So as I dug deeper into the Welsh archive in Aberystwyth when I traveled there, and I realized a lot of black stories were missing visually, and yet we're here, we create here, we contribute here, and we belong here. So I began to dig deeper into this narrative, not to rewrite Welsh history, but to simply add to it, because representation is not charity, representation is memory. So it's important that people's stories are told, and that became really important in the core of my work. So, and I think that was really important because National Library of Wales allowed me to do what I wanted to do, and I think that was really important in the stories we share. So when we view immigration, I think we shouldn't view it from a point of fear. I think we should view it through contribution of me and you to this beautiful nation. Because something beautiful really happens when we allow cultures to come together with openness and without fear. New stories begins to emerge. And where new stories begins to emerge, we begin to share a lot of people's stories. And right now, storytelling is more important than ever because loneliness is becoming global. You know, a lot of people are simply searching for belonging. Some are searching for family, some are searching for friendship, some are simply searching for someone to hold on to when things become hard. And talking about when things become hard, you know, back home late last year, I also had a personal family crisis back home. My parents were kidnapped for almost 7 weeks due to the insecurity issues currently going in Nigeria. And I can remember I was on a lot of phone calls with my brother, my sister, who were back home, my uncle, and some of my friends during that Sunday times. But that moment really showed me that community is not just about celebration. Community is also about people that can answer you when things become difficult. And strangely, within the middle of this, I was planning CLAT Awards, which I believe is the biggest youth culture and creativity celebration that has ever happened in Wales. And I can remember standing on stage giving my closing speech for the award, feeling overwhelmed, emotional. But at the same time, I was deeply grateful because I realized sometimes communities that we build are the people that stand with us even when we think we can't survive something alone. So 2 months ago, I went back to Nigeria. After 4 years in this country, I've been here since 2022. And, you know, when you go back somewhere when it's been a long time, you stop measuring life by its achievements. You start measuring it by its connection. People that loved you before migrating to the UK or before the award show or before the celebration. And maybe that's what home is. Maybe that's what home really is. Maybe not necessarily a place, but a feeling of being accepted. And that's probably what I've been searching throughout my life, whether through photography, whether through migrating to UK, or whether through CLAT Magazine as a platform. And I think a lot of people are also searching for something, a sense of home, a sense of belonging, a sense to call someone when they feel alone. So I think everyone should listen to other people because everyone is searching for home to feel understood, to feel seen, and to feel like they belong somewhere. So if there's something I want to take from my speech today is that community is not weakness. Community is not accidental. It is something we must build intentionally because community builds culture, culture shapes identity, and identity shapes the future. And I think the best thing we can do for each other, or the best gift we can give each other is not judgment, but presence. Not division, but openness. Not fear, but love. There's a popular saying, which I'll end my speech with, by Maya Angelou, which says, love liberates. It liberates, it doesn't hold back. And I think that's what true community is really all about. It liberates. It liberates us into becoming fully into ourselves. It liberates us into accepting one another. And it liberates us into building a brighter future together. And for me, that's what true community really means. Thank you.